first, it's time for journalist Nicole Lampert. Worsening scenes of violence in Israel in recent days have sent shockwaves around the world, with over 900 Israelis now killed and many thousands more injured or missing after Hamas terrorists broke across the border from Gaza, where they've held power since 2007. More than 680 people have also been killed in Israeli strikes on Gaza in retaliation. But despite widespread evidence of Israeli women and children and elderly people being kidnapped and killed by Hamas terrorists, many on the left seem reluctant to condemn the attacks, with former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn skirting around the issue yesterday.
Wait a minute. Why do you interrupt people when they're asking a question? Okay. Thank you. I'll go again then. Yesterday I sent out a statement calling for a ceasefire, calling for peace, and calling for an end to the occupation of Palestine, which of course is fundamentally the background to the whole issue. Obviously, all attacks are wrong.
But do you
Thank you. I think I've made
Hamas?
my point. I think I've made my point very clear. You quite made the point. No, wait a minute.
What the man is saying is...
Well, the journalist Nicole Lampert joins me now. And Nicole, thank you for joining us under these awful circumstances. I understand you were at a vigil earlier today, close to Downing Street. What was the mood?
Sombre. It was sad, but also there were quite a few MPs there, and they pledged to support Israel. That felt good to know. It hasn't always felt like that in this country. And there was sadness, and there was also just the kind of feeling of, you know, we can't give up. This is our homeland. This is the only homeland that the Jewish people have.
The only democracy in the region. The
only democracy in the region. And of course, after the Holocaust, we know what can happen if Israel doesn't have its own country, and if there isn't a place for Jews to flee to. And Jews have been fleeing there since its inception.
Well, indeed, I spoke just a couple of days ago to the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, and he said rooted in this is not the fight for freedom or anything like that. It is out-and-out anti-Semitism. It's hatred of Jewish people.
Well, they don't want any Jewish people on what they deem Arab land, and that's one of the big issues, in that you can only talk peace for people who want to have peace with you. But if most Jews, certainly most British Jews and most people in Israel, believe or believed in the two-state solution, but that's become... That idea has disappeared because it's become clearer and clearer that the other side don't want a two-state solution because they don't want to share the land with Jews. They don't believe Jews deserve to be there. They don't like to be on an equal footing with Jews. There were Jews in the Middle East for many thousands of years, and they were known as dhimmi. They had dhimmi status, which is second-class status.
How does it make you feel, as a Jewish person yourself, to see people in London and across the country waving the Palestinian flag, cheering about what's happened, which, let's not forget, involves the rape and massacre of innocent civilians, children, women, elderly people, and indeed support for what's happened outside of Labour Party conference in Liverpool today?
Well, even at the vigil this evening, there were people that were on the outskirts. There were a lot of police there, but there were people there with Palestinian flags. And I understand why people want to support the Palestinians. I'm not against the Palestinians.
Hamas, which is a terror group, and the people of Palestine need to be understood as two separate entities. And there is support among some Palestinians for Hamas, but not universal by any means.
Exactly. And the Palestinians are really victims of their own leaders. They're victims of Hamas, which are a fascist organisation. They restrict free speech. You're imprisoned. They kill their political rivals. And Fatah, on the other side, while they're deemed more moderate, they still also won't have elections. They're not democratic. They don't allow free speech.
Now, let's have it right. The Labour Party has changed under Keir Starmer. He's worked hard, I think, to rid the Labour Party, the movement, of the scourge of anti-Semitism. And they instantly condemned this attack by Hamas, which is recognised by the British government and the EU and others as a terror organisation. They're not militants, as the BBC have described them. Let's have a listen to what David Lammy has had to say.
There is never a justification for terrorism. Labour stands firmly in support of Israel's right to defend itself, rescue hostages and protect its citizens. The hostages so cruelly taken, including children, should be released immediately, and Hamas's indiscriminate attacks set back the cause of peace.
OK, that was David Lammy. So Labour have acted very quickly on this, which they likely wouldn't have done if they were still led by Jeremy Corbyn, who came that close to becoming Prime Minister, which I would have thought sends a shiver down your spine. However, why do some other figures on the left have such difficulty in condemning Hamas, these murderous thugs?
Well, I think, first of all, there is on the left, there's anti-Semitism. Of course, it is in all parts of society, but there's always been a stream of anti-Semitism. It's in Karl Marx, even, who was born Jewish. So there is that. And then, of course, they see the Palestinians, they see it as a David and Goliath situation. They see it as a kind of apartheid situation. And in some ways, it can be seen that way. If you look at Israel on the map and then you look at the tiny parts, there's Gaza and then there's the West Bank, you know, and they're small. Then you zoom out and you've got the whole rest of the Middle East that have been to war on the behalf of the Palestinians many times. You've got Syria, you've got Egypt, you've got Jordan, you've got Lebanon, and I think one of the questions that we have now is whether Lebanon joins in and Hezbollah in Lebanon to join with the Palestinians. And then we'll see that actually Israel, and to us as Jews, there are 14 million of us in the world, over half live in Israel, that we feel very much that we're a tiny, tiny minority. And we feel that in this country too. It's good to see David Lammy say those things. Yeah. I do wonder whether he would have said them if Jeremy Corbyn was leader.
Nicole, thank you so much for joining us on this very, very sad day and this most dreadful and appalling story. And my thanks to Nicole Lampert.